Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of The Manly Catholic. I am James, your host, and with me, very special guest, Dr. Ray. Dr. Ray, welcome to The Manly Catholic.
Hey, James, good to be here with you. We finally pulled this off
We
technologically.
did it. We did it. We are functioning at about 36% battery, both in our brain power and in iPhone power, but we'll see what we can do.
Hey, you connect us both up to a generator, we could toast a slice of bread.
Let's do it. Let's make this happen. So, for those of you who I'm sure you have heard of Dr. Ray, he is very well known in the Catholic sphere, but we'll dive deeper into his bio and a new book that we will be talking about tonight, which is Simple Steps to a Stronger Marriage. But before we get into that, we'll start with a Hail Mary. So we'll start in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother, pray for us sinners, now at the hour of our death. Amen. And Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, Dr. Ray, for those of our listeners who do not know, who've never heard of you, give our listeners.
How have they managed to live their lives this long?
I don't know. They must have just been born yesterday and they're already listening to the podcast. So they're already off to a good start. But leading into your bio, I want you to answer the question, if you could be the patron saint of anything, what would it be and why?
I would be the patron saint of truth seekers.
Oh, I like that.
Anybody
Why?
with an open mind who seeks truth will find God.
Beautiful. I love that. Especially now, this day and age where we can make up our own truth. That is needed. So I love that. So dive a little bit into your bio, Dr. Ray. I mean, I've heard, I converted to the Catholic faith about 5 years ago now. But I heard a lot of your, obviously on the radio and the books you've written and talks you've given. So give our listeners just in a 1 to 2 minute synopsis with all you've done. Who is Dr. Ray?
Okay, I don't know how far back you want me to go, James, but in the second grade, I was fractions champ of my row. Too much detail? Is this too much detail?
No, this is good. This is good. Keep going. Keep it rolling.
I stumbled into psychology. I started out in engineering. I just thought, it would be really neat to live in a caboose. I didn't know what engineering was. So I got out of engineering after I blew a physics test, got into pre-law. And I thought, well, you're going to be a good lawyer. You might want to know some psychology. So I got into psychology, and then I thought, well, this is pretty cool. Let me see what happens if I keep going. And I just kept going. And when I got out of school, I did nothing but see clients. So I worked in mental health centers, and you just saw 40, 50 hours a week of clients. That's what you did. And I thought, I don't know how long I can keep doing this. So I branched out into other things. I used to entertain in nightclubs. So that was a perfect venue for me to jump into public speaking, which I did. Public speaking pays very well. And with the public speaking came a lot of media appearances. Oprah, Jenny Jones.
There we go.
I don't know how to stop it, But anyway, so I just got into that. And little by little, I kind of just branched into where I am. And it's sort of unusual because of somebody. For years, James, I wanted to have my own television show. That was like my apex of careers. And the producers of some of these shows like Oprah and that, they said, oh, Ray, you should have your own show. It never happened. And the years went by and I gave it up. I thought, okay, isn't going to happen. The Lord gave me a chance to have a TV show on EWTN. And I can talk about God. I can talk about truth. I can talk about the things that matter the most in life. And if I would have gotten one of those secular shows, I think I would have blown out the first 6 months because I couldn't have done the compromises.
Amazing. Isn't it funny the timing that God has? And he always, I was interviewing a priest a couple weeks ago, and he said, God seems to laugh at the plans that we make as men because his timing is always perfect, and we always want at our timeline, but God's like, no, just wait. I have something better for you, and he always comes through every single time.
I left the church. I left the church for 10 years, and I was probably at my low point of Christianity because I was so confused. I didn't know what Christianity was. Depending upon who you listened to, where you sat, what church you went to, you could hear radically different things. Abortion's okay, abortion's not okay. Once saved, always saved, not once saved, always saved. So I realized I begged God. I kept saying, you said that you would give faith if people asked for it. And I begged. Long about the fourth year out of the church, I was wanting so desperately to find truth. And this is going to come as a surprise to you, James, but God is smarter than we are. This I know it. This is a shocker. And he knew what I would do. He knew that I would read, get all kinds of tapes, listen to hundreds and hundreds of people, much smarter than I, with all my questions about God, about the universe, about Jesus, about Catholic Church, about Protestant churches, everything. And during that time, he shaped me so that I could handle my own TV show and my own radio show. Because otherwise, James, what would have happened? Somebody would have called me and said, "Well, okay, here's what I don't understand. Like, why do you guys say Hail Marys?" And then I would say, "Oh, because my grandmother did, and my grandmother taught me, and she was really a nice lady." That'd have been about the depth of my answer. But I think that God was just kind of slapping me all over the place, and I'm so grateful to be back and be able to do programs like yours.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that you don't think that answer would have flown because my grandma did it?
It might have flown with people who are grandmas.
That's true.
Yeah,
Grandma and grandpas.
yeah.
No, that is true. But we need a little more in depth than that.
Well, by the way,
But
just a little bit of an aside, James.
yes.
I'm feeling a little older these days, and it's not because I have grandchildren. It's because I'm married to a grandma. That's really what's doing it.
Hey, your wife was the one fixing the audio and video here, so grandma has some brains. So, well, speaking of your wife, let's talk about this new book, "Simple Steps to a Stronger Marriage." And I must admit, I'm currently I'm about 80% through it according to my Kindle app, so I'm almost there. And it's funny that as humans we love to make things complex, and you mentioned that even in your book, simple steps to a stronger marriage. When someone reads that, they might think, well, isn't this a complex issue? Isn't marriage supposed to be complex with all these complicated issues? Shouldn't we have a complicated solution to fix our marriage or make our marriage better and things like that? But you kind of go the opposite way. You say, no, let's simplify it. So tell us why you thought this was necessary and why this message in this book is so pertinent and important in our day and age right now.
You are a physical therapist, James, correct?
I am, sir.
When you give somebody an exercise for them to do,
They won't do it.
unless it's very, very simple, right? It's got to be so simple, and it's got to be something they can repeat. And if you got to get them to do it more than 4 times over the course of a month. So in the book, I thought, if I find these steps that are very simple, now they're not easy, they're simple, and they can have a dramatic escalating effect. I called it the cascade effect. I'll give you a small example. Parent will walk into my office, totally frustrated, upset, angry, feeling a failure as a parent. I'll say, why is this? My 5-year-old's driving me crazy. I thought I'd be a wonderful mother. I used to go to confession. I was holy. I was nice. And now I'm not nice or holy. So I feel terrible. I said, let's do this. And I give them one or two very simple discipline techniques. Very simple. 2 weeks later, about half of them come back and say things like this. I can't believe this. It's like I'm living with a different child. She came up to me and hugged me yesterday 3 times. She hasn't hugged me in 4 weeks. She told me, I love you, Mommy. I can't believe she's happier. I said, that's a cascade effect. You did a couple simple things and it reverberated throughout the whole relationship. And that's what happens with these steps. But you know, when you read 80% of the book, so your IQ's probably about 120, 125, and you read the rest of it, it'll be 130. So given that, what struck you as different? Okay, I made the suggestions about the simple steps, and we'll get to those in a second if you wish. But then what did I do after that? That makes, I think, a big difference in these kinds of books where they say, okay, 10 happy, healthy steps to a more fulfilling relationship, 5 techniques for you to become a wonderful person. What did I do after I suggested the steps in the rest of the chapter?
Well, you gave examples, which I loved, personal examples, so stories. I mean, I feel like for me, when you put it in a story format, it kind of resonates with me better. But then you give the what was it called? The
Resistance
objection.
rationales.
Thank you. There you go. I was gonna say the objections, but I like yours better. Resistance rationales. That's the one I was looking for.
People will ask me, what is the hardest part of being a therapist? And you said this for your own profession. You know what to do. You can pretty much give people suggestions that will make them a little more pain free, maybe a little sturdier. You can give them ideas that will make them function better. But the problem is you can't convince them to do it. And that's the key in therapy. I've got the ideas. The hard part is convincing someone to do it. And that's what I did in the book. I knew when I made these suggestions, people were going to go, okay, but wait, okay, here's why I don't do it. Okay, this is what would happen if I did it. This is why they do it and I don't do it. They have all their objections lined up. I'll give you a small example. The early first step was say, I'm sorry. The standard objections to that are things like, it'll be thrown back in my face. I'm always the one who says I'm sorry. Well, I may not say it, but I act it. I get nicer. So what they do is they throw these objections out, the justifications on why they won't do this. And I try to take each of those apart and say, here's why your objection is not going to work and it's going to sabotage you. So that's kind of the structure of the book. Simple suggestions, and then I attack the objections.
No, and it's I found it very helpful, especially the one on I'm sorry. And I did want to kind of lead that into because that was going to be my next question is the I'm sorry. It's such a simple thing. We always teach our children, no, say I'm sorry, say I'm sorry. Why is it well, I guess I have two questions for you. Why is it so hard for adults to say sorry? And two, why is it so important for adults to say sorry? Because it's not just a kid thing. It's an adult thing too.
When an adult doesn't say sorry, or they're very slow in saying sorry, the question becomes, what does it mean to them? In other words, if I do something that hurts my wife's feelings, and I am thinking about saying I'm sorry, but I don't. Because why? Well, does that mean I'm a failure? Does that mean I'm not a nice person? Does that mean I'll show her she's always right and I'm always wrong? You see, what happens, James, is I'm sorry is filled with too much meaning. If when you say I'm sorry, you're basically saying, for what I did at that particular time, I am sorry. You're not saying anything else. You're not saying about your personality. You're not saying anything about your character. You're not saying anything. But most people, and this is one of the points I make in the book, when spouses get frustrated because their spouse doesn't say sorry, they say something like this. Well, he thinks he's so superior, he never has to say, I'm sorry. He always thinks he's right, so he doesn't have to say, I'm sorry. And I say to them, it's the exact opposite. When
Hmm.
you don't say, I'm sorry, you're insecure. You doubt yourself. You're not confident. You can't say it. What does that say about your level of self-confidence? I tell spouses, when you got a spouse that doesn't apologize, they're not superior. They're worried about being
Mm.
inferior.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean, I mean, you can translate that even just to sin in general, and so much shame too that comes with that. And what I like about what you do in the book too, Dr. Ray, is like I mentioned, is you weave in examples that you've maybe brought up in or have heard
Yeah, I cited
in your
my wife a
counseling and
lot.
things
Yeah, I
like that.
cited my wife a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
She didn't
exactly.
like that. She didn't like that. We got very close to divorce, but I told her, okay, I'll expunge some of those parts.
But it's for a book, honey, so
That's
it's
come
worth
on.
it. It's
You're
come
denying me
on.
money.
Okay, so now we'll kind of go the opposite way, right? So, okay, now we were talking about saying sorry, but then you also talk about silence, and I really enjoy that topic because I think silence is an absent part of our society that we need to kind of reclaim because we're all going crazy and we're constantly bombarded. Obviously, it's great we're doing interviews like this via technology, but we have so much technology. So, talk about the importance of silence when it comes to marriage. And I know you talk about too deeper into like an argument for an argument's sake, but talk about silence a little bit and why that's so important.
There were two simple steps that tapped into silence. One of them is don't say it. The majority of hurtful, offensive, nasty things that people say are said in the moment of peak emotion. When my feelings are fiery as all get out, the stuff that comes out of my mouth later I could regret. But because I had this impulse, this urge to shoot off what my feelings were telling me to shoot off, I created damage, created a lot of damage. So the step says, and now you know this because you're an expert in physiology. The step basically says your body's on your side. If you cannot say something for, say, 20 or 30 seconds when you're at peak emotion, you can't stay at peak emotion that long. It starts to taper. It does come down. It may feel like it doesn't, but it does. And as it comes down, it allows you more self control. I may not have been able to control myself in that first 3 seconds. I was going to say what I was going to say, and that's it. And I don't care who it blasts. But if I just don't say it, that's the step. 20 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe 40. If you can do it, you will have half of what you need to apologize for. The phrase is you never have to apologize for what you didn't say. That's so true. And that's big. Just don't say it. Now, the other one is listen a minute. A spouse will come into my office and she'll say, he doesn't back me up when his mother criticizes me. He doesn't
The
do this.
mom.
He keeps his mouth shut. I'll turn to the guy. Do you know why she thinks this? Not really. How long you been married? 24 years. You don't know why she thinks this? Not really. Have you asked her? So the bottom line is if you listen a minute without jumping in and defending yourself, without saying you do too, without saying what are you talking about, if you just listen, you can hear what they're thinking. I always tell people this. As a therapist, I hear a lot of rot gut stuff. I mean, I hear some nasty rot gut stuff. If I were to immediately say, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you talking like that? What a jerk. I don't think that session would last much more than about 4 minutes. I have to sit there and listen. I got to figure out what's gone on in their head. I don't agree with it, but I got to understand it. And that's what I say to spouses. You don't have to agree with it, but you better be able to understand it because most people would prefer to be understood even more than agreed with.
Yeah, I mean, one objection I have, because this happens with my wife and me,
Is
is
she
that
listening? Is she listening? You,
no, she is not. Well, maybe she is. I don't know.
you're
We'll
you're
find out.
you're toast, man.
I know we're done. We're both in the doghouse tonight. But so when our emotions are getting boiled, my actual reaction is to recoil and I won't say anything, and that makes my wife mad. She's like, "Why aren't you saying anything?"
But
And
wait a
my
minute.
response,
Are you punishing her?
no, because I know if I say something, it won't be very nice.
Well,
So
why don't you say something like that? Why don't you say, honey, I don't
see,
trust what would come out of my mouth right now.
see, Dr. Ray, when I'm in the moment, I don't think of that very profound sentence. So maybe I should write it down because yeah, I guess my reaction is I don't want to say anything. I'd rather wait, let it cool off, and then come back to it maybe like 3, 4
All
minutes
right.
later.
Let me give you a safer thing to say, okay?
Okay, yeah, talk to me. I
All right.
like this. We're doing live therapy. Let's go.
If you say, I don't trust what I'm going to say now, or if you say, I don't like what might come out of my mouth, your wife could easily say, oh, I just wonder what is percolating in there then. What kind of ugliness are you holding back? So say this instead. Say, honey, I'm trying to listen and understand what you're saying. I got to hear more. Once I do that, I will say something. But I want to make sure I don't just jump in without really understanding what you're trying to tell me. There you go. All right.
I
That's like
love it.
$8. That's $8.
Ah, yes. All right. Perfect. Thanks, Dr. Ray.
And then,
Appreciate it.
you pull a stunt like that with your wife, and she's going to go, what book have you been reading?
I just talk to people and I get free advice. It's great. I love it. So, you talked about being silent. And then you talk about, okay, so say you're silent for the 20 30 seconds. You've calmed down a little bit, but you're still just like, man, like I disagree with everything he or she is saying. So how can you respond gently, politely, but still absorbing the constructive criticism, we'll call it.
One of the steps is ask a question. My son came to me one time when he was 17 years old, and he said, hey, Dad, if I meet a girl and I want to make a good impression, what do I do? I said, well, Johnny, that's easy. I said, ask her about herself. Ask her all about herself. Don't talk about you. Talk about her. And so when those emotions are there and they're percolating and you just feel the impulse to defend every step of the way, ask a few questions. When do I do that? Well, why do you think I do that? When was the last time I did it? Well, would you tell me the next time I do it? In other words, you're just saying, okay, rather than me defending myself, I'm going to find this out here. Now, you know what people say about this, James? This is the standard big objection. At the end of the book, you haven't gotten there yet, but I call it the ultimate resistance rationale, and it's I don't want to. So people will say, if my marriage is friction filled, I don't want to do this stuff because all that will do is make it seem like I'm the one who's always trying. I'm the one who's the religious one. But I tell them, if you want a better marriage, if you want to be treated better, then you have got to do a few things. You can't take the other person by the throat and say, be nicer, be better, say you're sorry more, listen to me more, be more thoughtful. What's wrong with you? You can't do that. You have to change yourself first. And unless you live with Satan or his sister, people respond. They do. Most people will respond at least a little to a person who says, okay, I'm going to try these little things and see what happens.
I really, I mean, we just keep coming back to the simple steps, and I love that. And one that I did want to touch base on was that don't. I forgot the name of the chapter. Was it don't say the D word or don't mention the D word?
Dump the D
And
word.
dump the D word. Thank you. So, and the D word is divorce, and that's one thing that my wife and I, when we did the engaged encounter weekend, is that we promised each other we would never bring up divorce. Like that would just never be an option. And so, explain for those of you who are listening, why is it so important to dump the D word? And I guess the amount of freedom, in a sense, that you have when that's not even on the table, so to speak.
It's the big club. everything I think I've tried so far hasn't worked. So it's time to pull out the club. Well, maybe we just weren't meant to be together. I think that we ought to think about going our separate ways. If things don't change around here, maybe we ought to have some pretty dramatic changes. So what happens is you either imply it or you say it. I'm thinking divorce because that's the shocker. That's the one that says you better straighten up because buddy or woman, I'm on the edge here. Now, part of the problem is people say, "Well, I say it but I don't mean it." Well, then don't say it. Because once you say it, once it's out loud, the thought now creeps in. It's
Hmm.
an option. People come into my office a lot of times, James, and they come in for various reasons. I do a lot of marriage therapy. That's why I have this major tick. So they'll come in, and one of the spouses really doesn't want to be there. They're there because they want to be able to say, "Well, we tried therapy, it didn't work." They're head first into leaving this marriage. One of the first questions I ask them, is divorce an option? If they say no, then I say, good, because now I can ask you to do a lot of things. And you won't have to say, if they get too tough or if they don't work or if the other person reacts badly, I've always got the door. So that's huge. The divorce option off the table makes you more motivated to try anything. But if that divorce option is there, it's like, I don't know how hard I'll try. There's an interesting study, and you might appreciate this. A book called The Case for Marriage by Maggie Gallagher. They followed up, I think, several thousand couples. Of those who were on the edge of divorce but didn't, 5 years later, about half of them said their marriage was better. Of those who were on the edge of divorce and then left, they followed them up 5 years later and asked them, are you happier now than you were in your marriage? 80% of them said no.
Hmm.
Because of the complications. They got kids who don't want to come and see them now. They got a new girlfriend, boyfriend who has a kid who's a brat. They now have lost friendships. I mean, the complications are enormous, but they don't realize it. They just think, I'm going to get out of this marriage. I'll be happy. I'll get rid of this frustration over here. I'll drop this anchor off and I'll be okay. And they don't realize all the things that are in the future that they don't anticipate. That's why you
Yeah.
dump the D word.
Well, yeah, it just speaks volumes of us as humans. We want the quick fix, or we think the state that we are in right now, as tough as it might be, is that it's never going to get better. But that study that you just mentioned, just 5 years.
Mhm.
That's really nothing for most people in their general lifetime. If you live, 90, 95, 100 years. So, just sticking it out and recognizing, especially as Catholics, the vow you made, the promise that you made before God of what it actually means to be married, and recognizing that you really have no other option.
Do you know what the
Because
divorce rate was, James, in 1960?
I'm going to say 15%.
It's under 10.
Oh,
Now, was human
wow.
nature different then?
No.
See, exactly. What was it that made those folks persevere? And they didn't dance on their spouse's grave when they died. They were truly sad, even though they might have had what would nowadays have easily led to divorce, but they didn't. Okay, and so you're right. The D word is a nuclear warhead. And that's what I'm going to throw at you when I think that nothing I'm doing is going to make you change. Now you're on the edge, buddy boy. By the way, 80% of all divorces are initiated by women. And here's the other thing, most divorces are not because of pathology, not because of abuse or alcoholism or pornography or adulterous relationship. They are because I just really don't like you anymore.
Hmm.
That's the main reason. And those are the ones that can be fixed.
Why 80% are women? Do you know?
I can speculate. in most of human history, and even in many cultures today, men and women had a very complementary kind of relationship. For example, you go back 150 years in our country, the women, by and large, ran the home front. They were domestic. They did the things that they needed to do to keep things going at home. The men built things. They killed food. They planted food. They protected. Okay, that was our role. Okay, so even though we weren't necessarily naturally as good at communicators as the women, because they are better communicators, that was secondary to the fact that we brought a lot more stuff to the table. Well, now the women are as educated, if not more so, than us. They have money. They don't need to be protected from marauding hordes. They can go buy their food. They don't need somebody to go out and kill their food. So as a result, many of them would like guys to be more women-like. And in that sense, it's harder for guys. We're not as verbal. We're not as necessarily emotional about things. It's just the way we're wired. So because of that, I remember one time my wife was getting off the phone with a lot of ladies from church. I don't know, she talked to several of them. And she turned to me and she said, "Do you know what I think they would want in their marriage? I think they would want to be married to a woman who can lift heavy things." I mean, they wanted a guy to be as communicative and as emotionally sharing and as soft, but yet still be able to do some of these guy things.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's going to
Very
get me in trouble
interesting.
for saying that, but I think I got good research backup on that.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, I do want to talk about too. You mentioned the complementary relationship between men and women, especially when it comes to raising kids and disciplining children. And so, for obviously, for with the show or targeting men. So, how can men especially help their wife, their spouse, with raising kids or disciplining the kids? And why is it so important for the man to get involved too with that? And it's not just obviously women are naturally more nurturing, and it's quote unquote might be easier for them in a sense. But why is it so important for the man to be involved in that too?
One of the small steps in the book, James, was called protect. It's one of the later steps. I don't know if you got there yet. More and more women are coming to me and telling me that they are the authorities in their home, that they set the rules, they set the tone, they set the discipline. And Disney Dad over here, Mr. Good Time, Mr. Easy Going, laid back, not notice nothing, Mr. Honey, I was that way when I was a kid. I think I turned out pretty good. And the women are thinking, let's get the relatives and vote. So more and more women are telling me they're the authorities, and we guys are along for the ride. And I tell the guys, I say, you want to make your wife feel warm toward you? Protect her. I doubt that any guy, and I usually present this to groups, any guy in here would let any other human being talk to his wife the way that 11-year-old is talking to his wife on a regular basis. Next time you hear her locked in a battle with a kid, don't sit in the Barcalounger thinking to yourself, close my eyes, I can't tell which one of them's 11-year-old. Get in there and protect that woman. That's not just your mom you're talking to. That's my wife. Now you go sit down. I'm going to find out what she wants me to do about this. Well, you can't protect without getting a lawyer signed it at first, but. And then I'm going to do more. And I'll tell you, the guy, you know what the guys say? Well, the guys will say things like, well, you know, she nags him and she gets all over their case. And for heaven's sakes, just say it once and let it go and do something about it. And I tell the guys, her style may not be good. She's too wordy. She's too over talking. She's negotiable. She's emotional. So, but she's still the authority. She's still mom. She still has authority, even though she doesn't necessarily enforce it as good as she could. So you step in. You show the authority. You know, I used to, when we had 10 kids, at one point, James, we had 10 kids under 12 at the house here.
Oh, God bless you.
I never came home. I know I didn't. Wait, you think I'm nuts? I UPS'd her things. I said, here, honey, got another one coming next week. And when I come home, I could, well, James, I'm a highly trained communicator. So I could pick up on the subtle signals of a woman's dissatisfaction. For example, if I came in and my wife had two children by their upper arms, and she was saying, I do not like them, Ray. I am. I do not like them in my hair. I do not like them here or there. I do not like them. I don't care. I picked up on this, James, because I'm trained. I picked up on this that she was upset. And so I found out what was going on, and she handled it. My wife handled it. But then I added to it because my feeling was you don't give your mother grief like this. Even though she's a good disciplinarian, she's better than I am. But you don't do this to your mom. And I added to it. I said, you're going to bed early tonight. Mom doesn't need to deal with this. And that's what I tell guys. I say, hey, step in there. Protect that woman. Don't be a wuss. Because there's too many guys out there are like that. But then the women do this, and here's the catch-22, and I offer this as one of the resistance rationales. The women will say, yeah, but he's intimidating, or he's too loud, or can he be softer? And I say, is he abusive? No, he's a loving dad. Would he hurt the children? Oh, no, never. He'd never hurt the children. Then I say, then let him be a man. Don't tell him to discipline like a woman. Guys they're more authoritative as a group. They are more intimidating in some respects. I mean, come on, when daddy says to a 3-year-old, stop that, the 3-year-old reacts. Mommy can go, no, stop it. No, don't. Just leave it alone. Just put that there. No, listen. Are you listening to me? But when the dad goes, quit it, the moms go, why does he listen to you and not me? Well, we have a certain natural physiological advantage. All
Just a little
right.
bit.
Yeah. Okay. My dad used to just go, Raymond. And that was it. That was his discipline.
Shape up. Well, no, I see in Dr. Ray's household, Green Eggs and Hams was a popular book of choice.
I just want to say this to you on the marriage book, James. For the guys, I do have a scratch and sniff version. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not get that.
No,
I might have to talk to you after and get a
don't
copy of
scratch and
that.
sniff in the potty training section.
Yeah, I won't like the outcome. Would not like the outcome.
So to
That's for
speak.
sure.
So to speak.
Well, hey, Dr. Ray, I know we're coming up on both of our bedtimes here, but I do have another question for you. And I have not gotten to this part, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. But so in marriages, I know a common objection or thing that can happen is that affection or physical touch kind of seems to dwindle down as you're married 5, 10, 15 years. So why is it that affection sometimes dies down or chills in a marriage, and how can we reignite that, if you will?
Most of the people listening to this podcast, James, are people in decent marriages. They're probably faith-filled people, and they want their marriage to be God-seeking. Okay. You had a lot of science, I'm sure, in your education. Do you remember the law of entropy?
Oh, I remember listening to my professor about it.
Well,
Why don't you enlighten us, Dr. Ray, and I can tell you if you're right on or not.
Hey, I'm really starting to suspect you're not a PhD physical therapist here. The law of entropy is a major physics law. It says everything tends toward decay. Bodies age, iron rust, the sun will burn out, everything tends toward decay. There's a parallel law. I called it in the book the law of social entropy. Out of laziness, out of apathy, we decay. I don't give as many compliments as I used to when we were first married. I don't say please or thank you as much as I used to when we were first married. I don't touch you as much as I used to when we were first married. I don't do a lot of the things that I did, not because I'm hostile, but because I'm just getting sloppy. I'm getting lazy. So I talk about that. I say, don't let the law of social entropy kick into your marriage. You know as well as I do, the people you work with at one time, especially some of the guys, were probably pretty strong. They may have been a weightlifter or they may have been an athlete. They're pretty strong. Well, the guy's 87 years old now. And what came naturally to him when he was 31, he can't do. But you give him things to do to recover at least some of that strength. So he has to work at it. That's why I say in the relationship. It came more naturally the first 3 years of your marriage because, you're on your best behavior. This is fresh. This is new. You were courting, for example, your to-be spouse. You are on your best behavior. But then, 5 years, 8 years, 12 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 35 years, you just get sloppy. You get lazy, you get apathetic. And that's when you stop doing all those things. And if you're aware that you're getting sloppy, then you can turn the boat around a little bit. Sorry for the mixed metaphor.
That's all right. We'll forgive you on that one. So Dr. Ray, what would be, I guess, the one takeaway, one piece of advice you can give the men listening out there?
Would your wife say that you treat her better than you treat anybody else? Or would she say, boy, I wish I got a fraction of the compliments he gives those girls at work? I'll tell you what, the people at church think he's a living saint. They ought to live with him for a couple of weeks. You want your wife to say, my husband treats me better than he treats anybody else. And if she can't say that, then you got to look at yourself. That's what I would do.
Punch him right in the gut, Dr. Ray. I love it. Well, Dr. Ray, where can our listeners learn more about you? Where can we get the book? And any final parting wisdom for the men out there?
If they want a signed copy, all they have to do is go to drray.com, drray.com. All the other 16 books are there too. Which, of course, I just want to say, James, I was not on your show the first 16. I don't know what it was. I think you were neglecting and ignoring me. I'm not trying to take it personal.
Man, I think we need 16 more shows then.
Was
together.
It another psychologist? Was it something I said?
You are my first psychologist, so it's definitely not another psychologist. I'm not cheating on you, Dr. Ray, I promise.
So they can get it there. They can get it in EWTN. The book's a million seller. There's a million in my cellar.
So people buy his book. He needs his seller back. He needs to put wine down there, or his wife is going to get mad at him. Dr. Ray, this has been too much fun. We are going to have a 16-part video series coming out for you all in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that as we talk about all of Dr. Ray's books.
James, I appreciate it. You're a great interview.
Dr. Ray, this has been fun. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. And until next time, everyone, go out there and be a saint.